So I started solving first set, I could do it, after which I started the second set. Halfway into it, I realized that I could probably be able to solve only 2 questions out of the 5 questions. I moved to the third set, I tried solving it, it was not really happening, I had to leave it and I had to go to my fourth set. While I was solving the fourth set, again I realized that I might not be able to solve this entire set, I might be able to solve only half of this set. Now the problem is that this scenario had never happened to me during my mock test. So hey everyone, I am Mansi Mishra. I am an engineer. I have graduated in 2022 from VJTI Mumbai in information technology, and I have taken 2 exams in this season, CAT and ZAT. In CAT, I managed to score 99.30 percentile, and in ZAT, I have scored 99.50 percentile. Through ZAT, of course, I had the XLRI call. I had applied only through their BM program, Business Management program, and not their HRM program. So I had gotten the call for BM. Through CAT, I had gotten the calls I am Calcutta, I am Lucknow, I am Indore, I am Kozhikode, and FMS, SPJIMR, and of course the CAP calls. So basically all of the calls except A, B and Shillong. So when I pursued my engineering from VJTI, from the stream information technology, 2 years into it, I realized that this is not something that I want to do in the long term. This is not a sustainable job for me, and this is not something that interests me. So that one thing was very clear, that I do not want to go ahead with it, which is why also I did not take up campus placements. After I graduated in 2022, I took up internships in the domains of finance, and then I did fellowships in consulting and product management. Doing 2 internships in finance and 1 fellowship in product management and consulting, that gave me that helped as a tool to make an informed decision that I actually want to make a career into management itself. So that's when I decided that yes, this is the year that I want to have my best shot at CAT. So in this season, when I started my prep for CAT, I started in around July, August. So roughly around, I had prepared for CAT 2022 for 3 odd months, including everything. Since I had also taken CAT last year, I was conceptually very sound and I did not have to invest much of a time in that area. I just had to focus on my shortcomings and how to improve my scores in the mock. So that was my primary aim. Starting with VARC, the only thing that I specifically did for VARC this year differently was read more books and just read more books. That was one thing that was suggested to me by my mentor at IMS, Scrabbler sir. So that is one generic advice that even I would like to give to all aspirants, because that helps you even after your acing of CAT, because even in MBA you have to go through pages of case studies, and you just need to have a good reading speed. That is a life skill that helps everywhere. So that was one thing that I really worked upon. I read as many books as possible. Initially, I actually had to start from scratch from books that led my interest and caught my interest, something like comic books or basic story books. Then I moved on to genres which are not really my cup of tea or which are not really comfortable for me. So I moved out of my comfort zone. But eventually the whole key was to read as many books as possible. Not just books. In fact, I also used to read. I'm not a newspaper person, so I also used to read blogs daily. In fact, in IIM's Bharat's curated reading list was one thing that helped me immensely in that perspective. It's not an exhaustive list, but it also has a lot of bifurcations as to which topic I want to read an article on. So that was a very, I would say, elaborated resource in terms of reading the blogs. That was one thing that I referred to. I read articles from Aeon or The Guardian, etc. And of course, my regular reading for 1 to 1.5 hours every day. So that is one thing that I did for VRCs. So for DILR also, I specifically stuck to one specific strategy, and that is the only thing that you can do really, is that building a large database of sets by practicing more and more sets. The only rationale behind that is to reduce the surprise element during the time of CAT. The more sets you solve, the more types of sets that you are familiar with, the more types of questions that you are familiar with, the more plug-in conditions that you are familiar with, it will strike back to you while you are writing the CAT exam, and it will help in one way or the other by either reducing the surprise element or by helping you have that recall factor. Okay, at that time when I was solving this mock or when I was solving this set, I used this method, because of which right now also I can try that. So basically it reduces your time and effort also. So that was one thing that I did, is tried to increase my database of sets that I've solved by as much as possible. I solved sets from the IMS material that I have. and majorly I solved sets from the past year papers. Of course, CAT has a tendency to surprise you always, so there is going to be some or the other surprise element always. So I followed the ABC strategies, in which A essentially means abhi karo, which should solely be based on the time taken to solve that question, around 40 to 50 seconds, just not more than that. If it's not happening in that much time, you can ruthlessly leave it. Don't worry, trust the process, come back to it. That's what I had inside my mind. Round B were the questions which took around 1.5 to 2 minutes. Your proper time, speed, distance questions, arithmetic questions, all of that. C were the questions which I knew just after reading that this is not going to happen, it's better to not attempt it, just leave it, and then come back to the other questions of other rounds, right? So this is the strategy that I essentially followed. Another thing that I realized during the process was just because a question is looking lengthy does not mean that it is a difficult question. There are a lot of arithmetic questions which are worded around a story, like he gave XYZ to this, and a lot of that, right? So just because the question is lengthy, that does not mean that it is difficult. And just spending that reading time, here again comes the reading speed habit that I was mentioning. Having a good reading speed even helps in DILR and quant section. So having a good reading speed, I was able to read the questions quickly and decide whether or not it is a doable question or not. And just because it is looking lengthy, there were a lot of questions which were actually easy and doable in like 40 to 50 seconds. So that was also something that I worked on during my quants prep. So the first 5 minutes were dedicated towards set selection. I had a fixed strategy in my mind, but when within 5 minutes into the test, I realized that strategy might not work. I have to, since there were 4 sets instead of the usual 5 or 6 that used to be there, and there were only 20 questions. So I started solving. First set I could do it, but there were around 10 to 12 minutes that were over. After which I started the second set. Halfway into it, I realized that I could probably be able to solve only 2 questions out of the 5 questions, 2 or 3. I solved it. After that, for solving the 3rd, 4th and 5th question, I spent 2 minutes which I practically wasted, because it did not yield anything. I moved to the 3rd set, and of course these are not the 1st, 2nd, 3rd set, these are in my ranking order of which I had made during my set selection time. So I moved to the 3rd set. I tried solving it. It was not really happening. I had to leave it and I had to go to my 4th set. While I was solving the 4th set, again I realized that I might not be able to solve this entire set. I might be able to solve only half of this set. Now the problem is that this scenario had never happened to me during my mock test. It had never happened to me that I had solved only one half of one set and another half of another set. I had always solved either entire set or left it entirely. So this was something that was new to me. It sort of, now that I feel in hindsight, it sort of threw me off guard, which led to me shuffling between the 2 sets. So I was, within every 2 minutes during the last couple of 10 minutes, I was practically jumping between those 2 sets. I was coming back to the second, then going to the 4th, then coming to the second again, trying to make educated guesses. So that sort of creates a little bit of panic inside your mind, and I think that is something that should be avoided. Eventually I did make an educated guess, and since it was a type in the answer type of question, I also got it right. So that those were sort of 3 marks out of luck that I got. But again, I think that solving that also is something that you should be well versed with, is that having only half set solved and another half set solved. So that is something that happened in DILR. Eventually what helped was having the realization that if it is difficult for me, it is going to be difficult for everybody. And that's what happened. I had thought that my DILR is going to be way worse as compared to my mock tests, but I ended up scoring a 97.xx percentile in DILR also.